So the wait for the Browns' first win since I started my channel continues. However, to be honest, that's probably one of the least of my concerns this weekend. Hey guys, Oliver here, aka UK Browns NFL, and this is my review for the Cleveland Browns 21-14 loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. Before I even get into this game, let's address the elephant in the room. Deshaun Watson ruptured his Achilles yesterday. It has now been confirmed. And some fans cheered as he was carted off the field. We've seen all the statements from the players in their press conferences after the game. We've seen all the tweets from fans on both sides of this situation. I don't think anyone needs reminding. Look, in a vacuum, it would be easy for me to sit here and, say that I'm disappointed in the fans who cheered for Watson's injury. But I do think that the fact that we've even reached a point, where there's a public disagreement between the players and the fan base about whether or not they should cheer for the starting quarterback tearing his Achilles, just kind of shows you exactly where this organisation is right now, to be honest. This organisation has asked a lot from the fan base over the last few years. They've put fans, especially women, in a very uncomfortable and, at sometimes unbearable environment since the Watson acquisition. And whilst, I was still able to support this team despite of that, I completely understood why some fans were unable to do so. So again, while it would be easy for me to sit here and say that I personally disagree with cheering for a player getting injured, at the end of the day, who am I to tell people how they should react to the situation? I mean, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in my life. I'm sure most people watching this would also admit the same. So I'm not going to sit here and try and give anyone a lesson on morality, especially not to a fan base that, has had their morality tested probably more than any other fan base. This fan base that had felt the most united over the past few weeks than it had in a long time now feels just as divided as before. So where do we go from here? I don't really know, to be honest. But as I said, I think the fact that we've even reached this point where, there's a public disagreement between the players and the fan base about cheering for the starting quarterback tearing his Achilles, it really does just show you where this organisation is right now. So whilst we're all going to have different perspectives on this situation, I think it's important to remember that, we are all part of the same family. Whether you're an international fan, like myself, whether you were Cleveland born and bred, we all share the same common goal at the end of the day, and that's to see our team win and be successful. I have disagreements with Browns fans every day. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen a few. But at the end of the day, if you're a Browns fan, then, I love you regardless. We've been tested as a fan base. I mean, some of us, not me, but, some for nearly 60 years. But no matter how bad it gets, I think, we should always have each other's backs because that's what family does. And like I said, this Browns fandom is a family. So I just think it's important to remember that amongst all the kind of nonsense that goes on around that. Now that's the bad stuff. Well, I mean that and the fact that the Browns lost this game and are 1-6. But before we get into that, because I do need to talk about something positive for my own mental health, to be honest. We did have much needed positivity this weekend with Nick Chubb not only making his long-awaited return from his devastating injury that he suffered in week 2 last year, but he also scored a touchdown. And, he only had 11 carries in this game for 22 yards. And, at times looked like a player coming back from a serious knee injury. But it was still great to see flashes of the Nick Chubb that we all know, as he can hopefully, return to some version of his former self. And, the touchdown was an awesome moment. And even besides the touchdown, I think the best play of the day for Chubb for me, it came on that just miraculous block that he made, that prevented a sack and led to a first down. I mean, he almost threw Watson out of the way to get to the block. It was pretty incredible to see. But, it's amazing to see 24 back out there. And, while the Browns couldn't get the win on my birthday, seeing Nick Chubb run out the tunnel, and all the awesome stuff that we got to see in his return yesterday, did give me some pretty awesome moments, regardless. But moving on to the actual game itself, because I do have to talk about the game, unfortunately, in a game review. This offense has reached insufferable levels, to be honest. I mean, 7th game in a row without scoring 20 points. No quarterback is going to make this situation better. This is just a bad offense, and one of the worst in recent NFL histories, in fact. So yeah, not great. The defense actually played pretty well in this game. They gave up 14 of the 21 points, but they kept this team in the game for the most part, in my opinion. And at this point, that's kind of becoming the theme. The defense will give the offense every chance that they can to win the game. And most functionable NFL offenses would have at least won, one or two more games that the Browns have won this year. But this Browns offense is just consistently unable to do so. So, the actual game itself, we all know how it started. The Bengals took the opening kickoff 100 yards for a touchdown. And at that point, it looked like, the Browns were going to ruin Nick Chubb's return on the first play of the game. Nick Chubb's first carry of the game was on third down. I think it was 3rd and 3. Only resulted in 2 yards and them not getting the third down. So the vibes weren't great to start. Browns missed another field goal in the first quarter. As I've said before, Hopkins did have some passes for the misses in the bank, after his incredible season last year. But he is starting to run out of those passes, to be honest, and it is becoming a concern. That's multiple missed field goals and PATs already this year. Let's hope it's not a trend, but if it does continue, we might have to start looking at alternative options, even despite the fact that Hopkins got a new contract extension this offseason. You still might have to look into that. The Browns got a massive 4th down stop on Burrow in this first quarter. It really set the tone for the defense going into the game. But as I said, the offense just couldn't get anything done. The O-line continued to be pretty poor. I think back to that sack towards the end of the first quarter where Jed Wills just gets immediately beaten by Trey Hendrickson, which just kind of foreshadowed a terrible day ahead for Jed. The second quarter, the Browns' refusal to do anything on offense pretty much continued for most of the quarter. The Browns' defense played well. Multiple stops on Joe Burrow and multiple sacks that they got in the second quarter, that they held it down pretty well. And Watson arguably had one of his better drives of the season, and took the Browns down the field towards the end of the second quarter. But then, as we all know, it appeared to be and is now confirmed that he blew his Achilles. And, the cart comes out. It's pretty obvious how serious it is straight away. So then DTR comes in, who had actually been elevated for this game over Jameis Winston. He comes in, obviously, with Deshaun Watson going off injured. And his first throw of the day was actually a really good throw. Great back shoulder throw into the end zone, which obviously led to the Browns getting a PI call in the end zone. And which then led to I'd probably say the only good moment of this game. Which was the Nick Chubb touchdown on 4th down. It was a special moment. Seeing 24 back out there anyway was awesome to see. So to see him get the touchdown which at this point would have, to tie the game if Hopkins didn't miss the PAT, a game that you didn't feel like you should have been in, and you're right back in this game. So that was a very, very thin moment of joy, which obviously came straight after the injury. So it was kind of an odd, you could tell the broadcast were struggling with the words that they wanted to use. But like I said, just great to see Nick Chubb back. Great to see him score a touchdown. But like I said, the Browns might have lost this game and are 1-6, but it was an awesome moment for every Browns fan to see Nick Chubb score a touchdown, regardless of that. The second half, Browns defense, I'd say, probably had their worst quarter of the game in the third quarter. They gave up 2 touchdowns on 2 pretty quick drives. You had the 18-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase, and then a 25-yard touchdown to T. Higgins, I believe it was. And while it was, probably the worst quarter from the defense in this game, they weren't helped out by the offense at all, who once again were just unable to get anything going. A turnover on downs, a DTR interception in the third quarter certainly didn't help. And while I'd like DTR to not throw that ball as high, Tillman still has to catch that. But instead, obviously, he bubbles it, and Sam Hubbard was able to pick it off. So the offense really not able to help the defense in the third quarter, which I think led to them giving up those two scoring drives. But the fourth quarter, the defense really locked in and shored up in the final quarter. I mean, they kept the Bengals in check. But as has been a theme all year, once again the offense was unable to get anything going. Another DTR interception, his second of the day. Geno Stone with that interception, and then DTR gets injures his finger and comes out of the game. Just seems quarterback position for the Browns is pretty cursed. Winston comes into this game as the emergency third quarterback. Wasn't even meant to wear a helmet today, and he ended up taking snaps and then actually threw a touchdown. But yeah, Winston actually drove the Browns somewhat down the field after the Bengals missed a field goal. He managed to get a touchdown to Njoku, who made a great catch in the back of the end zone, and then the Browns converted the 2-point conversion on a pass to Cedric Tillman. And just like that, the Browns are somehow only down 7 with a minute and a half left. And with how this game had gone, it was pretty crazy to even be in that situation, to even have a chance to maybe get an onside kick, recover it, and go tie this game. But unfortunately, because nice things never happened to the Browns, they were unable to recover the onside kick, and the Bengals nailed the game out after the Browns had no timeouts left. So 21-14, disappointing loss, disappointing day as whole. Other than Nick Chubb, there wasn't really much to celebrate. But that was the game. Like I said, I thought the defense played well. But as it's been kind of every week of this season, the offense let them down. The offense was able to convert some third downs in this game, given that they were mostly 3rd and short instead of the usual 3rd and 9 that they've been averaging so far this year. They did actually go 8 and 19 on their third downs in this game, which is, it's not amazing, but it's a big improvement from the previous weeks, where they, went a stretch of 26 consecutive third downs without a conversion. I do think Watson was in the midst of, one of his better games before he got hurt, which I know doesn't say much, but I do still think it should be said. I think DTR came in and, he started okay, but after his first interception, it just kind of went downhill. He got in his own head and kind of just let it spiral. The kid clearly has talent, but I mean, you look at some of the keepers that resulted in some of the biggest plays on the day for the Browns offense. So the talent is there, but unfortunately, I'm just not sure he has the mental fortitude to make it as an NFL quarterback. And I think that's kind of shown with just how he seems to negatively respond to, any bit of adversity within the game. He's not able to overcome it, and he lets it almost spiral his performance out of control, which was disappointing to see. My three keys to victory for this game were to return to what we know on offense, which, to be fair, I do think that they tried to do for somewhat. I mean, more touches for Chubb than I expected at the start of this game. They clearly put an emphasis on running the ball and setting up those play action passes. Watson, as I mentioned, that drive from Watson towards the end before he got injured, which might have been one of his better drives of the year, that was pretty much predominantly play action. I do just think that, the way that this game went, they weren't able to properly stick with that. But I do think there are some positive signs going forward for this offense. They finally cracked over 300 yards on offense. So let's see what we can do next week with hopefully a full game out of Jameis Winston. My second key to victory was improved play from the secondary, which, to be honest, I think we got. Ward was fantastic, as he has been all season. 2 massive breakups that he had on Higgins and Lovie. I can never say his name. Is it Lozivas? Lozivas. I can't say his name. But 2 massive stops in big moments. Emerson and Newsome, I thought, were better this week. The Browns held Burrow and the Bengals to only 164 yards passing on 15 for 25 completions. I mean, to be honest, they played well. But even though you could, argue that they met my first 2 keys to victory, I made it pretty clear that neither of those would matter if they were unable to achieve the third key to victory, which was to not beat themselves. And they were unable to do it again. It just feels like they're coming up with new ways to lose games at this point. They gave up a 100-yard return on the opening kickoff, which, to be honest, I think I probably could have scored on that play, given how big the gap was. Another 10 penalties in this game to add to the 9 that I think we're averaging per game. Multiple alignment penalties on offense, which at this point I don't even know what to say. And of course, more missed kicks and more missed extra points. The margin to victory is so thin for this Browns team. It's almost as if they have to play literally perfect every game to even have a chance to win. And at the minute, they're playing anything but perfect football, if we're being honest. So where do we go from here? Watson is done for the year. The extent of DTR's finger injury is currently unknown. So I think the only thing that it is safe to say is that Winston will be the starter next week against Baltimore, and that the Browns will probably be signing a quarterback off somebody's practice squad to be the backup in that game. For me personally, I'd start Winston the rest of the year. If he plays well, then he can be your bridge next year. Like I said last week, I don't think this team should tank. That's just because I just think it creates a negative culture around the team. But at the same time, I don't think we're going to win more than 6 games, even with Winston as the starting quarterback the rest of the year. And I do think an important tidbit during the broadcast that I think went over a lot of people's heads. Aditi said that, when DTR came in and she did a report on it, she said that DTR had told her that Ken Dorsey kept telling him to stay ready all week, and that he felt that there was something in the works. And just kind of the way that she worded it, and you pair that with the fact that they elevated DTR over Winston for this game anyway, I personally think that signalled that they were ready to bench Watson this week if things didn't go well. Unfortunately, Watson's injury made that decision for them, so we'll never know the answer to that. But I'm pretty convinced that that's the logic behind the move. I don't think they had a trade in the works for Jameis. I really do think they were ready to bench Watson this week. But obviously now with DTR getting hurt, I just think let's just give it to Winston for the rest of the year, in my opinion. And look, I wanted Watson benched. I wanted him off this team just as much as the next fan, but not like that. And he is out now. There's no more scapegoat for this offense. They've got 10 weeks to, show who deserves to be here after this year. Players, coaches, staff, all included. We've got 10 games to evaluate this offense. Watson's injury should mark the end of his Browns career and, to be honest, probably the end of his NFL career. As gross as it sounds, I think this injury has essentially given the Browns a free pass to make the moves that are needed to move on from Watson without actually being, publicly out on him. It's a full Achilles tear. He might not even be ready to start next season, even if that was their plan. So they can draft a quarterback and claim it's for insurance when we all know the real reason. I think the worst thing that could happen is that the Browns think that there's something still to salvage out of Watson, and they let him come back from this injury and rehab this injury and be the starting quarterback again. There isn't anything left to salvage, and I do think that the Browns know that as well. If you've watched any of my other content, you'll know by now I am a Kevin Stefanski guy. I am an Andrew Berry guy. I do think that this team can succeed with both of them. But I did make it very clear that it will be how they navigate out of the Watson situation that will be the final determination for me on whether they should be the guys in charge going forward. If you're someone that isn't a fan of Stefanski and Berry, then unfortunately for you, I do think this injury has bought them even more time. Whilst most fans knew that Watson wasn't going to work out anyway, they can now fall back on the argument that, they never had a chance to make it work, given the suspension and the injuries that have gotten in the way. It is going to be interesting to see what they do. There is language within the NFL salary cap laws that does suggest that the Browns could be entitled to some cap insurance from this Watson's injury. That doesn't really have an impact on this year, even if it could. But if Watson is unable to go next year because of this injury, then the Browns would be entitled to some form of insurance. When I know the full details of that, I've asked my salary cap friends, particularly Jack Duffin, the salary cap expert himself, for kind of a bit more of some details on it. So when I do get more details on that, I will do a video on it. But for now, it's essentially business as usual moving forward from this Watson contract. But finally, the last point that I do want to make about this game, I've seen a lot of tweets kind of criticising this defence. And to be honest, the defence doesn't concern me. Sure, we're going to lose some players within that rotation this off-season, maybe even as soon as the next few weeks. But I'm more than content with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. This defense has been shaky at times, but what can you expect given how many bad situations that they've been put in by the other two phases of the team? I do think that Jim Schwartz and this defense might be one of the only things that I am certain on moving forward. So whilst I have seen, some people criticize this defense, for me, it's one of the only things, like I said, that I am actually certain can work going forward. So yeah, the Browns are 1-6, guys. It's just an unfathomable position to be in, given how much stock that this team had going into this year. It sucks. It really does suck. But like I said in the preview, the least that this team can do is go and earn back some of the respect, and hopefully lay the foundations for a more competitive and winning culture going forward. So that's all I want to see for the rest of the year, man. We aren't making the playoffs. We aren't achieving any of the goals that we set out for the season. So I think the least we can do, let's go out and give the fans something to at least enjoy. And as I said, hopefully lay the foundations as we kind of move forward in the post-Watson era. We're probably going to have a top 5 pick this year. And whilst I personally think that this draft class sucks, especially the quarterbacks, which always seems to be the way whenever the Browns are bad, I am more than happy to have my mind changed though over the next year as we do kind of unroll the draft process. I'm sure the draft content on my channel is going to start even earlier than I originally planned. But hey, that's just where we are right now. I'm not going anywhere. The Browns aren't going anywhere. So let's do what we can do to make this season a little bit more enjoyable. But that would do it for me, guys. This is getting harder and harder to do every week, but that won't stop me from talking Browns football. I can promise you that. If you enjoy my content, then please like this video, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps out my channel. You can check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. I want to create a community of Browns fans. And like I always say, even if I only get to talk to one Browns fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again, guys, and go Browns.